Okay. Hey, welcome again. We are here with Dr. Vita, and welcome to Mtanami. I'm Janet, your host again. Today we're talking about periods. Yes, periods, my least favorite topic, right? And the interesting thing about this discussion is how Dr. Vita, like the reason why I got to asking her about this interview is why Dr. Vita always says, you must love your periods. And for me, ever since they've started, I've always had a hate relationship with my periods. So Dr. Vita is going to come and demystify this relationship for us and help us feel better, hopefully, about our periods, right? So welcome, Dr. Vita.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be able to chat with you, Janet.
Yeah, so happy to have you back. We've had you here before, and we always love talking to you. Such a wealth of knowledge. So as we get into our thing, maybe you can just briefly tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can get into our questions.
So hello everyone. My name is Dr. Majita Bayanaikaki, and lots of people just call me Dr. Vita, but I go by either one. And I am based in the United States. I am Zimbabwean, and I love helping women with their women's health issues. And so I am a more on the holistic end of things, helping women correct their hormonal imbalances so they can have normal, painless periods, and also helping them resolve any fertility issues that they may have.
Wonderful. So we are with the right person here. All of y'all who are trying to get pregnant, Dr. Vita is your girl. So straight into our questions. Dr. Vita, why must we love our periods? You talk about it all the time. So here I am wanting to find out what is so significant about our periods that we should love it.
For my entire life, I just have never been able to figure out why women do not like their periods. I remember I was one of the last to get my periods growing up in school. And I just couldn't, I mean, I would go and buy the feminine products and just wait. I remember there was even one time where I lied and said that I'd started my period just to, I was just so excited about it. I've had some issues here and there with painful periods in my life, and I've worked to correct that using principles that I teach other people. But overall, a period is a gift. As a woman, you know that men don't have periods. A period should be cherished. If your mom did not have a period, you wouldn't be alive. If your mom never ever had a period, you wouldn't be alive. Many of us are mothers. I have one son. If I didn't have a period, then my son wouldn't be born. And so this is a gift from God, a very complicated hormonal process that God has gifted us with that allows us to not only bear children, but it also regulates a lot of other things that happen within our bodies. And once you understand how complicated a woman's menstrual cycle is, you'll cherish the gift of that period. So
Okay.
basically, you need to love it because it's a gift that's an indicator of your health and also your ability to conceive as well.
Yeah. I'm getting you there, and I think you're turning me. I think you're turning me. But probably just to give you context, why I don't love my period. It hurts. It hurts a lot, and there's so many things that I go through as I'm getting towards my period. My breasts are sore, my moods are all over the place, and I'm just not a happy person. And then also, am I pregnant? So the only time I'm happy to see my period is when I don't want a baby.
I think deep down inside you want a baby, Janet.
Okay, so probably getting into the nitty gritties of our periods. I want to find out, and this question is personal. Like in this last month, my period has been haywire, and there were certain things that I was eating. So I want to find out if there's any effect our the food that we take has on the periods that we have, or do they do they destabilize us hormonally or anything like that? Are there any type of foods that are bad for us when we're considering our menstrual health?
100%. The reason why you don't like your period is because it's painful. And so a lot of the foods that we eat can cause hormonal imbalances. So the pain that a lot of women complain about are number one, cramps.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are hormones that are released that will cause that extra cramping that happens just before and during your period. A lot of women complain about acne. So they'll start to get pimples all over their face. Those are hormones that are released that are causing inflammation in the face. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
women will complain about breast tenderness. All of that is regulated by hormones. And these are hormones that start to go up during our or right before our menstrual cycle. And food controls everything. So the types of foods that we eat will negatively or positively affect our period. So I have had painful periods early in my early 20s, and I've worked to resolve those. And so now I'm on my period right now, and my skin is glowing, and I have absolutely no pain at all, even before. And
Wow.
so, yes, my answer to you is I cannot say for you specifically, Janet, these particular foods will affect your menstrual cycle. Each woman is different. Some women can eat bread and that affects their menstrual cycle. Some people can eat bread and it doesn't. So
Okay.
each person needs to go through a period of trial and error. Generally, here in the United States, I have a specific diet that I put women on, and it's an elimination diet. So we eliminate the top candidates and then we start to reintroduce them with time. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you react, if you have a painful period, then you know, oh, that particular ingredient is contributing to my
Mm-hmm.
irregular or painful periods. So number one is sugar. All across the board, sugar, everyone should avoid eating as much artificial sugar as possible.
Okay.
The rest you can play around with, and they're more customized to each person. But all across the board, we found that sugar is very, very bad for women's menstrual cycles.
Okay. Yeah, and I get what you're saying because I think in this past month there was something uniquely different about my diet, and that's when everything went haywire. Um, I will let you in on a secret. I was eating a lot of soy products, so that I gather has a lot of estrogen or something like that.
Yes, soy is estrogen. Yep, soy. It's a soy. When we eat soy, our bodies will produce a lot of estrogen. That causes a problem. So those are
Mm,
certain foods that it's more cultural. So here in the United States, especially the area where I live in the U.S., people don't eat a lot of soy. So that's not generally something that I will discuss with people. But I have worked with people in Zimbabwe, and you have maybe Seventh-day Adventists who eat a lot of soy. And so I've had people that I've had to work with that have had
mhm,
backgrounds like that. And some of them have had their periods go away because of consuming a lot of soy.
yeah.
So yes, there are things like that I urge people to stay away from. But some people can consume soy in moderate amounts and they're fine.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. I have peace now. So now there's no more soy in my diet. Now, what are the indicators of poor menstrual health?
I say number one, if you don't like your menstrual cycle, that is an indicator that you have poor menstrual health. Because what's not to like? For me, I
Mhm.
have no reason not to like my period because it's just a regular day. It's not heavy. It doesn't interrupt my day. So if you have that negative relationship with your menstrual cycle, you have a poor menstrual cycle. If
Yeah.
you have pain during your menstrual cycle, you shouldn't be in pain. A menstrual cycle is a gift. It's something that God gave us. God did not give us a menstrual. If you believe in God, I definitely believe in God. A menstrual cycle is not something that God gave women to punish them.
Mm,
If you have that kind of view towards God, then how do you view yourself? So you should not be in pain. Your flow should not be extremely heavy. If you are changing a pad every couple of hours because it's just over, even after 4 hours, it shouldn't be like, bleeding through to your underwear, that is an indicator of a problem. If
Okay.
you have a very smelly menstrual cycle, I was raised where they say, even before I got my menstrual cycle, they told me it's going to be very, very smelly. So if you have a very, very smelly blood flow, then that is an indicator of a problem. Maybe it's not a problem with you internally, but maybe the menstrual products that you're using
Okay.
could be causing that smell. We can go into that later.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a little breast tenderness is okay, but if it's like, wow, like I'm feeling that pain, then that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem. If your face is breaking out a lot, then that's a problem. That's a sign of some hormonal imbalances. So those are major.
Yeah.
I also want to add mood swings on there. If before your period or during your period, you're just, yelling at people and extra frustrated with people, that is an indicator of poor menstrual health. Despite what other people may have told you, that is not a good thing. We're
Yeah.
not designed to be witches and to be mean and to be evil to people during our menstrual cycle just because we're on our menstrual cycle. That's an indicator that there's a problem there as well. So
Okay.
those are just the main things. If I would say if you have even just one of these, then that's an indicator of poor menstrual health. If you have all of those, then that's a serious problem.
So you need to admit me, because if I were to come up close to the camera, you'll see my face is broken out, and my flow is haywire and all sorts of things. So yeah, you and I are on at the same time, by the way. Okay, so what are the indicators of a good and healthy menstrual cycle? I think you touched in on it a little bit, but we can get into the details now.
So I like to say the menstrual cycle is a time of peace, a time of joy. If you would have interviewed me last week when I wasn't on my cycle, my tone would probably be a little bit different. I'm calmer during my menstrual cycle. All the hormones that are coming in during this period should come to calm you, to
Mhm.
reassure you that everything's going well in your body. For some of us that don't want to get pregnant right now, we're happy that that off flow is here.
Oh, yes.
So your menstrual cycle should come regularly,
Mhm.
and the actual number of days is different from person to person.
Mhm.
If you're in that age where you want to get pregnant, it's good to keep your menstrual cycle around that 28 to 32 day range. And
Mhm.
yes, you can work with people like me to alter the number of days of your menstrual cycle. Um, if you have a menstrual cycle that's, let's say, 25, 26 days, I'm not as concerned. If you're regularly at 25, 26, or 24 days, I'm not as concerned. But if you want to get pregnant, that's not ideal. You need a bit of a longer cycle. And I want to explain why. So, after you ovulate, you need your lining to get thick so that the egg can implant in there. So, what does that mean? The whole point of a menstrual cycle is so that you can have a baby. And when you bleed, you're shedding the lining of your endometrium. So, you have, let's say, you have the vaginal opening. If you go
Mhm.
all the way into the vagina, women, if you stick your finger in there, you should know that area. If you stick your finger in there, you can feel all the way up is the cervix. And so there's like a little hole in that cervix, and that goes up to the endometrial lining. And so there are these walls around that cervix that are like this. And so
Mhm.
those walls, they will thin during your period. So you're bleeding because there's thinning of that lining. It's becoming super, super thin.
Okay.
And so what happens during that 28 to 32 days is it's getting thicker again so that it can get thin, thick, thin. So that's just the cycle of the period. That's what the period
Mhm.
is. And so if you want a fertilized egg to implant, it needs to be thick. So that's
Okay.
why a longer menstrual cycle is ideal. That way it can get nice and thick so that the egg can go in there. If you have a 24, 23-day cycle, it doesn't really get thick enough for that egg to go in there. So a healthy cycle, ideally you want to be as close to 30 days as possible. 28 days is good, 32 days is good, 27 is even okay.
Okay.
And so if you are coming on regularly, and you're able to change a pad every 4 hours without it being super heavy, and you're feeling okay, you're feeling relaxed, you're not in pain, you're not breaking out, then that's a good cycle. And another thing that I also want everyone to note is a healthy menstrual cycle you will bleed for about 3 to 5 days. The women that bleed for 1 week, that's too long. So 3 to 5 days is that sweet spot. I don't even 5 days is long. You can have a little bit of spotting, but if you're actually bleeding, full bleeding for 5 days, that's a bit long. You're losing a lot of blood that way. And furthermore, when you're going through that particular bleeding, there shouldn't be a lot of blood clots. So you'll see some women, you'll have thick pieces of tissue in there. There shouldn't be any thick piece of tissue in there. When you look at your pad, it should just be blood on there. No blood clots, no tissue. Those are signs of a serious issue.
Okay. Wow. So I should be thanking God that I have babies, because I had before my daughter was born, my firstborn, I had a 21-day cycle. So
So, okay. So, another thing that I wanted to clarify, and I know you know this, but some people don't. So when we talk about how many days are in the cycle, I'm talking about from the first day you bleed to the next time that you bleed. So some people will say I have a 18-day cycle, but they're looking at the last day of bleeding until their period starts again. So I'm talking about day one. So I started bleeding yesterday, right? And yesterday was the 28th of July. And so when I start bleeding again, I'm going to bleed for the next couple of days. Let's say I'm going to stop bleeding on Saturday. I started Wednesday. Let's say I stop on Saturday. Then yesterday was day one of my cycle, not Saturday. So Wednesday was day one of my cycle until I start again. And so that is ideal. Of course, people have babies outside of that range, but we don't recommend that someone that has a very, very short cycle give birth. That could lead to other complications and other, really, after the pregnancy is what we're scared of. Is if someone has a short cycle like that, then it'll be difficult for them to go into menopause. A lot of times we see that those women have issues down the road after they have the baby, and increased postpartum depression and other issues as well. It happens. Some women can do it and they're perfectly fine. But we just try to minimize the risk of issues happening down the line.
Okay.
So what was your experience? Tell us, what was your experience?
Falling pregnant, you mean?
Were you trying?
Yes, I was. It took a little bit of time,
Okay.
and you know how it is when it's taken a little bit of time, you start to get anxious, you start to get stressed and things like that. So I attributed the failure to get pregnant at the time to all of those other variables. Then, that's my family in the background.
It's a beautiful noise.
Oh yes. So then it just happened. I mean, when I stopped stressing, it just happened. I discovered I was pregnant. And then with my son, my second born, I had been on the implant contraception. Then I took it out because of major weight gain. And then I went on to the loop, and then I started to develop a crazy discharge which I couldn't understand, and I took it out. And 2 months after going off birth control, that was it. Fell pregnant.
Nice.
Yeah. So shocking baby, and I wasn't ready for that. But hey, he's here, and we
What's
love
the
him.
age difference between the two? How old was the 4?
4 years.
Okay.
4 years.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a big gap.
I was not trying to get pregnant. Actually, you know what? If God hadn't made that little boy appear, I wasn't gonna let it. So another question I want to ask, and I think this is a very, very pertinent question, especially for the Zimbabwean women, right? Right. Let's talk about Jeko. In the sense of, for those of us who are not Zimbabwean, Jeko is period pain for us Zimbabweans. There's this myth that if you share clothing, I know this is so not scientific, but anyway, I need to talk about it. If you share clothing when you don't have period pain and then you share clothing with someone who does, it's contagious. And I will say, probably to just like support it. For those of you who are there watching, thank you for being here. You can, if you've got any comments or questions, just put them in the comments there and we'll try and read them out as best as we can. So for me, when I started my period, I was like really young. I think I was 11 years old, right? And Mrs. Flo came. She wasn't dramatic. I was confused about what was happening. It was there. Then I went to school. I would have my regular flow, 3 days, I'm done, no pain. I was great. Then someone asked, when you're in boarding school and we have events, someone asked to borrow my clothes. And I was like, okay, fine, wear something, my pants. And the moment they came back, dude, I have had consistent period pain ever since then. So you can go ahead and give us your answer.
How do I answer this? I tend to not answer things that are not scientifically proven.
Yeah.
So, as much as I want to doubt that this is true,
Mm-hmm.
it's an experience that you have gone through, and I don't want to discredit your experience with it.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna have to say that my personal feeling is that that is very unlikely. But I don't have the science. Everything that I speak is scientifically proven. So I have never done a study on it. I've never seen a study. Perhaps we can do a study on it and gather 1,000 women and see if and see if that's true. But medically speaking, that is impossible. But spiritually, I believe that anything can happen spiritually. So, so I'm just gonna have to just say we need scientific evidence to be able to conclude that.
No, I hear you, girl, but it's just one of those things that we're Zimbabwean. This is a thing for us, right? So our next question is going to be about period pain, and I just want us to watch this video about men who were put on a period simulator. So this is how men reacted to what period pain feels like. All right, so playing it here.
Simulator.
Yeah.
Right. I feel it in my legs. I feel it. It's going through my body, but I'm just like.
Bro, that shit making my shit. Stop. No, stop. I'm cramping.
Hell, girl. It's weird. Exactly.
Okay, so that's a teaser, right? Men did not hack that well. So let's talk about period pain, right? Why does it happen?
So, period pain is due to hormones, just like anything during our menstrual cycle. You have increased muscular contractions. I used to be an athlete, and a lot of athletic women will feel this, that during their menstrual cycle, just before, they'll start to have more contraction of their muscles. So sometimes they'll have muscle aches, increased muscle aches. Sometimes they'll cramp their muscles easily. For the woman that isn't regularly using their muscles as much, they'll feel that right in their abdomen, their lower abdominal area. So this is due to contractions of the uterus, as because the hormones are triggering this event.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, how then can it be managed? What do we do?
Yeah, it can be managed. Of course, you can temporarily manage it. Absolutely, you can temporarily manage it with anti-inflammatories, whether that's natural anti-inflammatories or if you want to get a prescription or even over-the-counter meds. You can definitely manage it by applying a hot or cold compress on there.
Okay.
So usually a hot one works really, really well for women. Cold is great, but cold doesn't feel as good as a hot or warm compress.
Yeah.
And so I tell ladies, don't just work on the short term gains that you can get, but come up with a long term solution. Prevent the cramps from coming in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that I highly suggest is the use of castor oil packs. Castor oil packs can temporarily, but then they also have a long-term effect. So if you have some castor oil, you can get a cotton flannel. You put the castor oil on the cotton flannel, and then you put it on your lower cramp area. This is great to do maybe like a week before you know that your
Okay.
period is going to start, or right when you start having like PMS symptoms. So you put that on there, and then you can put a heating pad on there. And then if you can lay there for 45 minutes, that'd be great. If you can do that the days leading up to your period, then that prevents the cramps from coming. But then it can also provide a more long-term solution because it could detoxify some of the issues that are going on there.
Oh.
So that's a big one. So if you're in the middle of your period right now and you're in pain, like right now, yes, you can apply. You can take some anti-inflammatories, some pain meds, apply a hot or cold compress. But if you know that your period's coming, then I suggest that you use castor oil.
Okay. And
It's
I
also
will.
good for fertility as well. It's a big thing that I teach people to
Okay.
help them get pregnant if you're having fertility issues.
Lovely. And you know what? I will back you up on that hot compress thing. I know that whenever I have period pain and I use a hot water bottle, it really tones it down like way, way, way down. So yeah, I recommend it too. And I will definitely try the castor oil thing for next time. Then you mentioned the issue of clots, right? What are they and how can they be avoided?
Yes. So there are multiple reasons why women will have clots. It could be because you're eating foods that you are sensitive to, or you're eating foods that you're allergic to, or you have things in your environment that you're allergic to.
Hmm.
Or they could just be because there is a issue within you, a systemic issue. And so the way to avoid that would really just be to avoid allergens. So it's in when you bleed, you're supposed to just bleed continuously. You're supposed to bleed and then you clot after bleeding. But if your system is bleeding then clotting, then trying to clot and then bleed and clot, that's a problem. So think about whenever you scrape your skin. Let's say I fell or I cut myself while I was cooking and I bleed. After I bleed, then a clot forms there. And the purpose of
Hmm.
the clot is so that I don't bleed anymore.
Hmm.
So it's like tissue that forms right there. There are what we call clotting factors and different proteins that will gather at that site so that we can stop bleeding. Now, if you have blood clots, that means that your system is bleeding and then they're trying to stop the bleeding, but then there's bleeding that keeps continuing and then it's trying to stop the bleeding again. And so it's really dysfunction of the menstrual cycle. So you should just have blood coming out and then it should clot and then you shouldn't bleed anymore. But if you have blood clots, that means that your system is trying to say, okay, I'm done bleeding, but then it still continues bleeding.
Okay. Yeah.
So avoid allergens, be careful what you put on your skin. Your body could be reacting to something, or it could be the sign of another underlying disease.
Okay. So at what point should we then seek medical intervention?
If it happens every once in a while, so if you look at your blood and you see just a few clots here and there, you can. I would suggest that you take advantage of some of my resources. You can do a detox,
Hmm.
and so if you do a detox at that point, then you can get rid of that blood clotting. But if you have like serious every single day of your cycle, you're seeing clots coming out every time you change your pad, then I would say you should definitely take a picture of it, and definitely go and seek medical attention for it. So if
Okay.
it's a little bit here and there, it's something that could probably just be fixed by you changing your diet and other environmental factors.
Okay.
But if it's serious, then it will require some further testing.
All right. No, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So there's a question that's come in from one of our viewers. They're asking, this is a gentleman. He says, this is good. Educational discussion, ladies. Could you define men's supportive role during the menstrual cycle?
Yes, the supportive role that a man plays is very, very important. But number one, men need to know what their woman goes through during the menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I can talk about myself and my husband. While during my menstrual cycle, I'm not in pain. I'm not like extra moody, or I don't have those types of symptoms. When I'm on my menstrual cycle, I want to spend more time at home. I want to spend more time hugging on my son. I'm different during my menstrual cycle. I want to spend more time by myself sometimes. I want to lay down more. And so he understands that. And so he needs to be a little bit more bending in certain situations. Sometimes he may have to eat the sadza from yesterday. As much as he doesn't like that. He may have to eat the sadza from yesterday. Or he has to bend a little bit. So I think every man needs to know what their woman goes through. If your woman is telling you during my menstrual cycle, I have headaches, then be supportive. Do not do things that will trigger the headaches. Take the kids out so there's no noise in the house. I encourage men that when a woman is on her menstrual cycle, take them out to eat. Make the workload a little bit easier on them. Do not frustrate them a little bit, especially if you have a woman that has mood swings around that time. There have been times during our relationship when I have had months where I've had mood swings with my husband. And so be upfront with your partner, like, hey, I'm on my cycle. So when I'm on my cycle, I'm a little bit extra moody, or when I'm on my cycle, I'm in pain. So I lay down. So I think it's on the part of the woman. We're taught not to have these conversations with men, but I tell women, no, have these conversations with men. Let them know, sit down with them, because if you don't tell them, that they won't know. Tell them, okay, so my period comes for 1 month, for 1 week and a month. I know that you don't want to hear this. I had to say that with my husband. I know you don't want to hear anything about period stuff. We're taught in our culture not to discuss this, but I need you to know what goes on with my body. Okay, so then women, that's when you go and you tell them. So I have these cramps, and the cramps are so painful. You can show them the video that we just saw here, and show them that pain and say, sometimes it feels better if I just lay down. So perhaps we can go out to eat, or perhaps we can get, maybe I can cook earlier. So I will sometimes cook earlier in the day versus later on at night when I just want to rest. So I think it's on the part of the woman to be communicative and share your particular symptoms. Or, hey, my face breaks out during my cycle. Or, I have a little bit extra tenderness on my breast, so don't touch my breast, or just whatever you're going through. And then as a partner, the male should be able to bend and flex. So if your woman has the cravings, hopefully she doesn't have too many cravings, but if she does have cravings, buy her chocolate, cook for her, take her out to eat. So I think it's just understanding your wife's symptoms and then providing whatever comfort she needs. I was part of a panel some months ago talking about periods, and my husband usually, sometimes he'll listen to the stuff, sometimes he doesn't. And he came on there and he shared and he contributed, and he said, growing up, I had no idea, my husband's Zimbabwean. And he said, I had no idea that women even went through this. I had no idea that this was even a thing, that women actually battle things like this. And so being married to my wife, I've learned a whole new perspective on something that it's just in my head, in my brain, I just never fathomed. So that's when I realized that a lot of men are insensitive because they just don't know. This is something they're not trained to even think about what this is. So they just need a little bit of education just to say, okay, today I want to go to sleep at 7 o'clock today. And, so
Yeah.
that's my response.
All right. No, and that is important. I resonated with a lot of what you were saying. So thank you so much for that. And we're thankful for the question that came through. We just want to say hi to our viewers, Precious, Doreen, Slevy, Edith. Thank you all. We are loving having you here. And we'll just move into our questions. We'll finish off the ones that we have so that we can quickly answer the ones from our viewers. Now, I want to ask quickly, is it normal for the flow to fluctuate in intensity or duration during your cycle? Like this month, you may go for 4 or so days. Next month, you go for 7, or then another time you bleed heavier. Another time you bleed less. What would be going on there?
So all of those will be indicators of your lifestyle for the past couple months. Okay, so sometimes with the weather, cycles can change. So when it's cool outside, you won't bleed as much, but when it's hot outside, you may bleed a little bit more. And in terms of the length of how many days you bleed, like I said, if you're getting to 7 days, then there's probably some lifestyle or habit that you did that was not that great. For the prior months. So for example, I actually documented this in one of my YouTube videos where I went on vacation in April, I believe it was May. I went for my anniversary. I went on vacation in May, was eating anything, cake, you give me whatever, I was eating it. And so when June came, the week before my cycle started, I had bumps everywhere. I had menstrual cramps. I mean, just what everyone else typically discusses, I had all of that. So I attributed that to that vacation that I went to. And I knew I was setting myself up for a painful period. And actually, it didn't start on time. It was a little late as well. And so that was very odd for me. I'm usually very, very much on time. So when I answer that, I don't want to say that it's normal for that to happen. It's not ideal for that to happen. You need to be very, very consistent in the number of days that you bleed. Now, if you're saying I bleed 3 days versus 3.5 days, or 3 days versus 4 days, that's not a big difference. But if the difference is I bleed 4 days versus 7 days, that's a big difference. So if however you treat your body, you'll see the end result with your menstrual cycle. If you're depressed, I look at, times of devastation in my life, like when my brother died or my dad died, my cycle was all over the place. So you have to also look at the emotional state of your mental health as well. So yes, whatever you're doing to your body or whatever happens to you, whether it's unfortunate or not, then you will see changes in your menstrual cycle. I do want to add that they have seen in the research that since COVID-19, women are having greater issues with their menstrual cycles. And so you see how a change of lifestyle, a change of life as we know it, has significantly altered women's menstrual cycles. They're more irregular, they're more painful. They're serious issues that women are having as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. So like you're saying, mental health probably because we're more stressed, and so that makes a lot of
stress. And then, I even look at my lifestyle. I spent a year at home, working at home. Whereas I used to go out with people. So the type of food that I ate had changed. I used to just go to the food court and get a salad, but now I'm at home. Everyone's at home. I'm cooking salsa. I'm cooking this. I'm cooking, different. I'm cooking all these different things, 3 meals a day. Whereas before I used to be busy. Maybe I would skip a meal here or there, or maybe I'll just grab a bar or a piece of fruit. But now I'm at home. I can just cook and cook and cook. And bills, a lot of people lost their jobs. My mother lost her job. That's stress. I had a few family members that died. My mother-in-law passed away. I mean, that's just in my own personal life. I had a
It's a
lot of
lot.
stress. I can't imagine other people, what
Yeah.
other people dealt. I still was able to keep my job. Other people lost their jobs. Other people had no sources of incomes, so it was devastating. So yeah, whatever happens in your life, you'll see that your menstrual cycle is affected.
No, definitely, and I concur. We're also less active, right? We're
Right.
not moving
Yeah.
around as much as before, and I think also for me, it's been the balance of juggling the work that I do, my kids, and just trying to have a moment. I've been saying I would like to go on a ship into the middle of nowhere for about a week by myself, just
Yeah.
by myself, because
Yeah.
I need that.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
We love our families, yes, but we need time. We
Yeah,
need,
yeah, especially the ones that have had to homeschool.
yeah,
That is tough, especially having multiple kids. You have people who have 2, 3, 4, 5 children that they had to homeschool. That is hard.
it is. It is. So I completely hear you and agree 100%. Now, tell me about the issue of period versus fertility. Can your period tell you anything about your fertility?
Yes, when I often have women that come to me with fertility issues, I ask about their period. I want to know their period. Number one, their cycles. So like we said, you have about 28 to 32 days or so, give or take, between when you're bleeding.
Mhm.
And so in the middle of that is when you ovulate. So the egg is released from your ovaries. You have 2 ovaries. You have 1 egg, sometimes 2 eggs, sometimes 3 eggs will be released. And so the whole point of that is so that it can meet with the sperm and then implant into the endometrium tissue, into that cervical tissue I talked about earlier. And so if you don't ovulate, then that's a problem. So I guess it's around day 12 to 16 is when you ovulate. So if you have irregular periods, it could be because you're not ovulating. And so that could just delay your period because your body doesn't know, like, okay, have I released that egg or have I not?
Mhm.
So that leads to some infertility issues. And like I said earlier, if you have very, very short periods, like that 21 day, you're not allowing enough time for the lining of that endometrium to get thick. So imagine you need about 10 or more days for that lining to thicken. So if you ovulate at day 14 and 6 days later you start your period, that's not enough for the lining to thicken.
Yeah.
So in your case, you had 21-day periods. You probably ovulated earlier. So you probably ovulated maybe day 10 or day 11, which happens. It happens to a lot of women. They ovulate earlier. So the biggest thing here is making sure you have a regular period so that we know that you're ovulating. Some women will have a regular period and they'll kind of release an egg, but it's low quality.
Mhm.
So you can have other issues that go down the line. We need to do further testing. But overall, if I see that a woman has a 30-day cycle, a 30-day period, and she doesn't have the blood clots, she doesn't have the painful periods, she doesn't have she bleeds for 3 to 5 days, and it's not heavy, then I know, okay, her chances of getting pregnant are very, very high. And if
Okay.
she's not, actually, I can't think of a single instance where I found a woman that is infertile that has the qualities, the list that I just talked about. So usually women that have fertility issues or that have delayed conception, usually they struggle with some of the things that I talked about today.
Okay, so is it possible then, if you don't have the things that you've just talked about, is it possible to actually be able to get your body into that space where you have optimal health for fertility? I mean, what should we do? What are the key steps?
Number one, food. Watch the food that you eat. So I say this, I emphasize food a lot because many people eat 3 or more times a day. So think about the different things that you put on your plate every day.
Mm.
And you're eating that food once, but then you're eating it again and again and again and again and again. So think about if a person has an allergy towards a mealy meal and they
Mm-hmm.
don't even know it, and they're eating mealy meal. Let's say you have porridge in the morning, and then let's say you have sada at night every single day. Then that
Yeah.
causes a devastating effect to you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that a lot of people are allergic to mealy meal, and a lot of people are allergic to whatever. Each person is different. But food is something that we constantly consume all of the time. And I've been able to really work on people's fertility just by changing the foods that they eat.
Okay.
So I would say number one, just eliminate a lot of eliminate sugar as a starting point. And eliminate a lot of the foods that I talk about in I have lots of free resources, my YouTube channel, Dr. Vita Natural Health. I even have free guides that you can check out. So just start eliminating some of those foods that I talk about. And there are also some lifestyle things to eliminate. Of course, limit your consumption of alcohol. If you're trying to get pregnant, don't drink any alcohol at all. And of course, stay away from tobacco. Be careful about the things that you put on your body. The lotions and things that we use are very, very important because we absorb food through our skin. And so they're what are called endocrine disruptors. And so the endocrine system is our hormone system. And so they're
Mm.
endocrine disrupting chemicals that are in a lot of the mainstream lotions and makeups and things like that. So they come in and they tend to mess with the hormonal function and contribute to fertility
Okay.
issues. So I would say that if you want optimal fertility, even if you don't have fertility issues yet or you haven't started getting pregnant, I always tell women that ahead of time, make sure that you're consuming the proper foods for your body and that you're not putting anything on your skin that is harmful. That is a good starting point.
Yeah, I've actually seen your video that talks about the different chemicals that are in the environment that can affect our fertility. So that's on your Instagram and YouTube as well as the Facebook, right? Yes.
Yes. YouTube is always the best just because everything's organized in playlists. So you can go to the
Mhm.
playlist for fertility, for example, and then you can kind of just browse through. There's more content on my YouTube than
Okay.
anywhere else.
Yeah. And besides, Dr. Vita is hip, she does these very cool videos.
It's been a while since I've been so busy. It's been a while since I've done a dancing video, but I got you. I got you. Once we
Yes.
get to September and my life calms down a little bit more, I was planning to do it this past week, but I got into a very bad accident. But September, I've got you.
Yeah. We're happy you weren't hurt in that accident. So
Thank
thanking
you.
God for that, definitely.
Thank
And I'll be waiting for September. Wait. Right. So we talked about our varying cycles, and how they play a role in our fertility. So when would be the best time, like the best time within the whole cycle of your 30 days, 27 days, or whatever, to actually fall pregnant?
The best time is right when the egg is being released from
Hmm.
the ovaries. And there are ways that you can figure that out. So like I said, right around the middle of your cycle, it's different for each person. Some person, it could be day 14, day 12, day 16. But usually somewhere between day 12 and day 16, that's when you'll have the egg being released from the ovaries.
Hmm.
So as soon as that happens, that's when it's good to get the sperm to go in. Now, sperm can stay in the canal for up to 5 days. So if you're with a partner that has very motile sperm, then even 5 days before the egg is released, then the sperm will just stay there. But we're seeing issues with male sperm as the years go on. So I
Hmm.
think it's the environment, the food, the sedentary lifestyle
Hmm.
that's contributing to men having sperm that isn't as motile. So the best thing to do is to buy ovulation strips. And so
Okay.
you just pee on those ovulation strips or you stick them in a cup with your urine in there. and then it will tell you luteinizing hormone. And luteinizing hormone is a hormone that is released just before your egg is released from the ovaries. So egg is released, then you get the sperm in there, and it will meet the egg.
Wonderful stuff. So I don't know if it's normal, but every month I can feel a sharp pain on my side. You know, sometimes it's on my right side, sometimes it's on my left side. And someone said to me that that's ovulation happening. So can some people actually feel the pain of ovulation?
Yeah, usually. So usually when women have pain during ovulation, and it's like really painful, then they probably have a cyst that's there. So do you feel it on both sides?
No, just it alternates from
So
side
you'll
to
feel
side.
the sharp pain on one side 1 month, then the other side the other month.
It's more like a discomfort, you know, where you just feel like this dull ache and then
Yeah,
it goes away.
I
Yeah,
know
it
exactly.
doesn't linger for too long.
Okay. Yeah, so yes, lots of women can feel that little release, but you shouldn't really feel it unless there's like some inflammation there or just like a little cyst, which cysts come and go. So some women will just develop a cyst when it's time to release, and the cyst will go away. So it's sometimes nothing to worry about. But yeah, some women can feel that little sharp, sudden pain that
Mhm.
happens. But if it lingers for a long time, then definitely you have cysts.
Okay.
Not you, but whoever's listening. If it happens, if you feel the pain continue like for an hour or more, then
Yeah.
definitely there's some inflammation, some cysts or something there.
Okay. Awesome. And then lastly, from my list of questions, when is the best time to actually say, okay, you know what? I'm done monitoring this. This isn't making any sense. I now need to talk to the doctor in relation to falling pregnant. You know, when you've done all the things we've talked about, or you've noted all the things we've talked about, when is the best time to actually say that this is no longer working? I need help.
Number one, before you even try to get pregnant, make sure that your menstrual cycle is normal with
Mhm.
the way that I've indicated it. Make sure that it's optimal, I guess is the right word.
Yeah.
So make sure that you don't have any of the symptoms that I've listed before you start getting pregnant. Now, once you start trying, if you cannot get pregnant, which is very, very rare to fix all of your menstrual cycle issues and you cannot get pregnant, I would say that after about 3 to 6 months, then maybe introduce some herbs to
Mhm.
help you with your fertility. And I just recently did a video on my YouTube channel discussing herbs for fertility, and it highlighted one particular one. So I would start introducing some herbs. If that doesn't work after 3 months or so, then I would make some adjustments to continue making adjustments to the diet,
Mhm.
incorporating some full fat yogurt in there for sure, some other fertility boosting foods that I talk about. And if after a year that doesn't work, then definitely um, you're infertile. So some extra tests and other things need to happen. Here in the
Okay.
U.S., we don't start getting concerned until it's that 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So usually on the holistic end, I'll work with people. If it's been 3 months, then that's when I'll start with the herbs immediately.
Okay.
Usually that works within the next few months, but if after a year you cannot get pregnant, then you're infertile.
Okay. So on the issue of herbs, right? You and I have had this discussion before. People need to be careful the kind of herbs they actually are consuming. And I think with COVID, people are consuming a lot of stuff because we're trying to be it's like prophylaxis. You know, take this, take that, because it'll help you strengthen your immune system, and you don't get sick and the like. But when you and I had a conversation, there was stuff that I was taking which actually affected my menstrual cycle, right? So I think people need to actually know what they're putting into their bodies. And if you're not sure how it affects you, please get in touch with Dr. Vita, because you never know how what you're taking will affect your body, and the ripple effects that it can have on other things that you're trying to do or not trying to do, right? So one last question for me. I realize I didn't put it in here is, can we use our menstrual cycle to actually prevent pregnancy?
Yes, that's what
Mhm.
I do. So I don't use any hormonal contraceptives or even non-hormonal contraceptives. I've always tracked my cycles since the day I got married. I just track my cycle to prevent pregnancy. So the
Okay.
key here is to just not engage in intercourse during ovulation. If you're unsure, I need everyone to be sure of when you ovulate. You need to ovulate consistently every single month. So you have to be sure of when you're ovulating. If you're not sure, then you can buy the test strips and then test for a few months until you're sure that, okay, I'm consistently ovulating on day number 14 of my cycle or day number 16. And so once you know that you're ovulating around this time, then don't engage in intercourse around that time. Or you can use some protection or other methods to ensure that no sperm gets in.
Okay.
This is a way that I recommend, but of course you have to be disciplined. More about this.
I'm behaving
that this isn't something that I push on people. While I recommend it, I don't push it on people because you have to be very, very diligent and you have to be able to resist the urges in the moment. Or like, make sure that you have protection with you or something else.
Okay. Awesome. No. I'm much better than I was back then. So it's working. It's working.
Okay.
I'll just read a couple of messages from our viewers. Someone was asking, how about going on periods twice in 1 month? What will be going on there? This is coming from Doreen Gwanzura.
Hi, Doreen. That will be a serious problem hormonally. So your hormones are imbalanced. I would need more information about that. So when you go, is this like full bleeding for 5 days? Twice, like 5 days you bleed and then you just take a week off and then you bleed another 5 days? That's a problem. That's a problem. But a lot of women go through that. A week doesn't go by without people saying that they have that particular issue. So if you bleed for, like, your period is consistent, you bleed and then you stop, you need to have a gap of about at least 3 weeks, about 3 weeks or so before you bleed again. If your gap is just 1 week or 2 weeks, then that's not ideal. So you need to have time. You need to have a few weeks in between when you stop bleeding, or 3 weeks between when you stop bleeding and when you start bleeding again.
Yeah, I can also imagine for our blood supply, that is very unhealthy as well.
That is very, talk about anemia and lots of other, like, depletion of nutrients as well.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for that response. We've got some comments coming in. Great topic, indeed, answered my questions. Thank you. That's Doreen again. She mentioned that earlier. And then Slevy saying, great lesson. Thank you, Janet and Doug. Yay! Hey, Janet. Hi, Edith. And then Edith says, this is when you were talking about how men can support us during the period. So she's like, I like where you're going with this talk. And then we've got Madrine Chiku, who said this is powerful and she's loving it. So I wanted to just say that this session of our discussion with Dr. Vita was focusing a lot on our reproductive side of the menstrual cycle, when we want to fall pregnant, the optimal health and things like that. We're also going to have another session with Dr. Vita sometime in September. We'll be talking about young women, girls and young women, and how they can start thinking positively about their menstrual cycle as well, so they don't have the love-hate relationship that some of us grew up with, and they can learn to love their cycle. Another comment from Rosalind Williams, which says, thanks for the great life-changing information. And Doreen says, thank you, Doc. I think we responded to some of her questions. Probably she'll want to engage more on the side. But thank you so, so much, Dr. Vita, for making the time, for being here with me, having this conversation, talking to all of us out there, and educating me that my period is a gift from God, and I will treat it with more respect. Ooh, yes. So stay tuned for our second bit in September, part 2 with Dr. Vita. And yes, great stuff. Oh, answer great stuff, Murora. Doc does answer a lot of questions. And someone just commented as well, relevant topic. So thank you, Dr. Vita. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know your day has just gotten started. So thank you for making the time. We love you and take care.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you to our viewers.